Hey, welcome to this first video for Unit 5 on angles. And so this is designed for you to use a protractor, which is one of those plasticky things that usually looks like a half circle and has a bunch of numbers over there. So if you have a protractor, that would be better. If you don't have a protractor, and I don't have a protractor right now, we'll just make the best of it. So first of all, a right angle, you probably will remember a lot of this stuff. This might be just a bit of a review. A right angle has 90 degrees. So if you have a protractor, use it to try to make exactly a 90-degree angle. If not, just you can sort of freehand it like I am. Try to do a better job than me because I don't have a ruler to draw like this. I'm just using my fancy surface pen. So it should look something like that. It should 90 degrees. Looks like the corner of a square. And this says angle ABC. Now, A could be here, B here, C there. By the way, the position of A and C don't really matter, but the middle letter of those three should be where the corner is, or where the vertex is. So to answer that question, where does point B have to be? In the corner. Oops, something weird happened there. Let's try it again. In the corner. Write in a right angle symbol to indicate that it is 90 degrees. So a right angle symbol looks like that. It's that red part that I put in. So it looks like making a mini square because a square has 90-degree angles in all four corners. What is half of 90 degrees? You can just take 90 and divide by 2, cut it in half, so we get 45 degrees. So a 90-degree angle is a pretty easy one to estimate. A 45-degree one isn't bad. So let's try it. Let's see if we can just eyeball and make our own 45-degree angle. So what I would do is draw a line first and then kind of estimate where the 90-degree one would look like and then cut that in half. So that's kind of where I would say the 45 degrees. Now the other thing about angles, in this, it's not a right angle, so we're not going to put one of those corner symbols in there. But I'm going to show that an angle is really like a rotation. So if you imagine like this is where an arm or a line is to begin with, and then we rotate it that way. We have rotated it, in this case, 45 degrees. Right? I could draw something similar, and I could rotate that way, and then it would be much more than 45 degrees. So you got to pay attention to how that arc, how that inner part is drawn. And sometimes you're going to have an arrow, and sometimes they're just going to draw it something like this. So in this case, that one is on the left is 45 degrees. The one on the right is much more than 45 degrees. It's a lot of rotation. Okay, so it says my estimated 45 degrees actual angle. So this is the part where if you do have a protractor, you could get it out and write it in there. And let's say, I got out my protractor and I measured it, and probably maybe it's at 42 degrees. I think people often, when they estimate things, they draw it less than 45, and even though they think it is 45 degrees. Okay, both 90 and 45 degrees are fairly easy to draw or recognize without a protractor. These types of angles, by these types I mean angles that are easy to draw or to recognize, are called reference. R-E-F-E-R-E-N-T-S. Not C-E, not reference, but reference with a T. It's kind of hard to say. All right, acute angles. And again, you probably learned this from earlier. An acute angle is between 0 and 90 degrees. So what does an acute angle look like? Well, if you've got this one here, and I draw another one, and remember that the 90 degrees would be kind of like that. So you draw your other line anywhere in between. And so that would be an example of an acute angle. And by the way, you don't have to draw the first one that way. You could draw the first one any part you want. So that would also be an acute angle. If I draw this and label that part, that is not an acute angle. So I'll just say check, check. That one is not. Just a little preview, by the way. This one is called a reflex. So we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Two other referent angles that are easy to estimate can be made by dividing a 90-degree angle into thirds. try to like freehand draw a 30-degree and a 60-degree angle using only a ruler and then check with a protractor. So the way I'm going to do it is I'll draw my first line like this, and then again I'll sort of estimate where the 90-degree is. And then I'm going to cut that part into thirds. So maybe one line will be over that way and another line will be that way. And I don't know, I think I did a pretty good job. So in other words, I'll draw in green, this would be my 30-degree angle. And I'll draw in red, that one would be my 60-degree angle. So I hope that makes sense to you. And if you do have a protractor, once you've finished it, then you can measure it. And it's okay if you're not perfectly correct. So maybe I drew that first one a little bit too big. Maybe it's like, I have a little pen problem here. Maybe the first one was 32 degrees, and maybe that second one was 58 degrees when I measured it with my protractor. Okay, moving on to obtuse angles. Obtuse angles are bigger than acute angles. They're more than 90 degrees, but they're less than 180 degrees. So it says draw an obtuse angle and then measure it with the protractor. So I'm just going to draw an obtuse angle. And again, just for as a reference, I'm going to draw that 90 degrees, so I have to go larger than that. So, that would be the amount of 90 degrees. 180 degrees would be a straight line. So if I kind of went like that, that would be 180 degrees. So I have to draw the second one that ends somewhere in between there. So, and I'll show that this is the part of my angle. And I think I cut that 90 and 180 into half. So really this would be 90 degrees plus 45 degrees. So I'm going to pretend, let's see what's 90 plus 45. If you see what I mean, that this part would be 90. And then this part would be 45. So if I add 90 to 45 together, I get 135. So in my case, I'm just saying, hey, it kind of looks to me like it's around 135 degrees if I measured it with a protractor. And so a reminder, if you do have a protractor and you're measuring it, that dot here goes right there. So you want to line that one up on there. This line goes right along that line. And then you look, there's a set of numbers there. If it's an obtuse angle, you want to take the larger of the two sets of numbers. Okay, so moving on. Straight angle, I may have mentioned this, is exactly 180 degrees. It says draw a straight angle, DEF, label the points. So a straight angle looks just like a straight line. So I'm going to label the middle part, again, what I called the corner before, although in a straight angle it doesn't really look like a corner, does it? That would be my middle letter, and I'll put the D here and then the F there. To be honest, the order of the D and the F doesn't matter, but E has to be in the middle. And that would be my straight angle, and I'll even label that is the amount of rotation. So it goes 180 degrees, and that makes a straight line. Which point has to be in the middle? The E has to be in the middle. The reflex is between 180, which is a straight line, and an entire circle, an entire rotation, which is 360 degrees. So reflex angle has to be between 180 and 360. So if I draw that first one in there, I could draw another one in there. So this one would be reflex. Okay, so that one is reflex. Just as a reminder, if I drew this one, that would be an acute angle. So be careful and look how it's labeled to tell whether or not it's a reflex angle or an acute angle. Okay, at this point, I'm going to ask you to press pause from the video, and I want you to try to fill in question number 1. So in question 1, you take these words here and you try to pick the right answer and fill them in the blanks. And I also want you to do question 2. Instead of pictures, it just gives degrees, and again, you pick one of those same words and you fill them in the blanks. And then the last one is a couple of estimations for question number 3. And if you have a protractor, you can actually measure and see how good you were as a result. So please hit pause now and do those 3 questions, and then when you come back, I'll show you what the answers, and you can check to see how you did. Okay, so here are my answers for the first set of practice. You can check those over. And then the second set. And for the estimation, I said A looked to me about like 45 degrees. It looked like half of a 90. B looked like a little bit less than 30 degrees, so I wrote 20. And C definitely is less than 180. And so I thought it was about 30 degrees less than 180, so I said 150. I didn't actually measure them, so maybe if you see me later on, and if I got them a little bit wrong, you can tell me and correct me. So I'm going to stop now, and you can continue on to the next video for the last part of this.